What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be going over the biggest winners and losers of college football week number 2. This is going to be essentially a draft stock report, but I like being able to toss in some guys who are notable, who are not draft eligible. So super excited for this. We're doing it every week, so if you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to do the deal. Also use that link tree to be able to take advantage of our sponsors of the show. Shout out to UnderDog, they're great, but also to get involved everywhere else, including on Twitter, where I post a lot. Let's get on into it. Let's go into the stock up. Yes, this is not the 3 that are in stock up, but who gives a shit? One of them is, though. It's Ashton Jeanty. This guy is back-to-back. He is he's on fire. Did an absolutely amazing job. 25 carries, 192, along with 3 touchdowns, 9 missed tackles forced versus Oregon. That's incredible. He's solidified himself as the RB1. He did it last week, but he certainly confirmed it this week. The only way he could end up not being an RB1 is if he starts really having a fumbling problem, which he did last year, but it was less translatable to the NFL than just getting popped and fumbling the ball. It was a lot of second effort attempts. So super excited for Ashton Jeanty. We're going to get another player that is, it's taboo to say this, but Bijan-esque. Like just somebody who is nearly unstoppable at that level. Great size, great vision, really solid athleticism overall. So someone who I'm very excited to see. I had him as top 32 last week. I'm having him top 20 this week. It's pretty hard to see him getting out of the top 20. I had him going to the Browns in my most recent mock draft, but I do think a team like the Cowboys that have a very good offensive line would be a great location for him to be. Then we're going to talk about Harold Fannin Jr. next. This guy had 11 receptions, 137 yards, and a touchdown to pretty much damn near beat Penn State. Like, that is phenomenal. He is someone who is dynamic, someone who I really love after the catch. There's no all-22 for Bowling Green, so I told you guys, based on the players that I have scouted, I only scout through all-22. I have opinions on guys like Harold Fannin that I really like, but I want to wait for all 22 tape before I actually start putting them into grades and putting them into practice. So super excited for Harold Fannin. He's a little bit on the lighter side, sub 240 at 230, but I do think that a team like the Eagles that do appreciate a really reliable, really solid after the catch threat like Harold Fannin would be able to take advantage of him. Then we're going to talk about Kyle Monangai next. The eye is cut off by my face. But Kyle Monangai ended up having 27 carries for 208 yards and 3 touchdowns. This guy's an absolute badass. I mean, people have loved him since the preseason. Didn't end up watching him in all 22. I should have, if I'm going to be honest. But he was going to be on the running back deep dive that, I ended up doing the top guys, ended up not including him, which I think is a mistake on my behalf. So I'll take it on the chin. But phenomenal job. I didn't really think he produced as many missed tackles forced as I wanted to. I think it was like 5. But at the end of the day, 208 yards, 3 touchdowns on sub 30 carries is phenomenal. Then we're going to talk about Cam Skattebo. This guy has been really reliable for ASU for the past couple years. He's 5'11", 215, so really solid build right there. Just somebody where that he's just damn reliable. So for me, whenever I think about that, granted, this is a new regime, but I always think the Patriots. But 33 carries, 262 yards, 0 touchdowns, but 8 missed tackles forced in a close game. So Arizona State pretty much wouldn't have done jack without Cam Skattebo. So shout out to him. I think I'm forgetting what his nickname is. It's essentially quite a weird name. It's like Wonder Boy. But he does a phenomenal job. I don't know if he's going to translate to the NFL in that regard. And I think it's very similar to what we saw last year from the Missouri running back. I think it was, Cody Schrader. So it could be kind of like my comp for Cam Skattebo in terms of production to NFL translatability. Then we're going to go over the stock up, guys. I have over 90 lines of these dudes, so that's why I end up titling this the biggest winners and losers. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of dudes who I really wanted to include and just couldn't. And yes, I could add an extra page, but at the end of the day, this is designed to be short, sweet, and get to the point. And, if you guys want to see an extended version, I'm more than fine creating a document that you guys can always go and reference. So let me know about that. But, that one would be probably something that's more of a premium option than anything. But I digress. Starting out with Nick Emonwari. He's my top safety in the class. And, I had my concerns because of the fact that it was heavily based on his athleticism. And all of a sudden, this guy just absolutely lurks. I think it's I can't even say that dude's last name. UK's quarterback, Kentucky's quarterback, Vandergriff, I think, Brock Vandergriff. And he just absolutely lurked him, took it back for a pick six. Super excited to see him do that. But not only that, he had over a 90 PFF grade, 91 defensive grade. Like, that's phenomenal. I mean, defensive grades don't mean everything. But when you end up looking at the whole body of work, he really did end up putting a well-rounded game, and he kind of topped it off with that pick six. So shout out to him. Quinshon Judkins is next. I know it wasn't like that big of a game for Ohio State. Like, it is what it is. But 9 carries, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. But here's the kicker. He had 7 missed tackles forced. So, like, that ratio is just ridiculous. I had to include him on here. I wanted to include him as a star of the week, but I didn't think Ohio State played the competition that required me to put him in that regard. Then we got Cade Klubnik. He was somebody who I arguably almost put on, pretty much the star of the week list. But again, I mean, this is already a stars, like that's a stars of the stars. This is a stars list. 379 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 3 big time throws, 0 turnover worthy plays. That's how you bounce back. Because Cade looked like ass versus Georgia. So, I mean, obviously this was a game that Clemson should have won, but it's still super duper key for, him to be able to do that. So good job on him. I mean, I don't reward quarterbacks in terms of boosting their stock, so to speak, because of performances like that, because, I want an NFL translatable game. But the fact is, it stopped the spiral down, and I think that is good enough to include here. Nick Marsh is next. Michigan State wide receiver, had 194 yards and a touchdown versus Maryland in a game where they didn't really throw that much. He had over half of his team's passing yards, or receiving yards for that matter. And versus Maryland, that is a really good defense. Very difficult to do that against. I know that Ty Felton also had a really good game. He had over 140 yards. That dude was one of the guys who I was dying to keep on this list. But at the same time, Nick Marsh just had a better performance. It sucks, but I didn't include him in the stock down. Antonio Gates Jr. is still not being used, and I think that's like one of the biggest crimes in all of college football. I think that's horrible asset management there. But continuing on, we have Jay Higgins, linebacker out of Iowa. He had a 92 defensive grade along with an interception. He was just absolutely dominant in that game versus Iowa State. It's a big game, obviously. Iowa versus Iowa State. 2 very good competitors, and you have to perform really damn well to be able to get not only a just overall great grade, but also be able to get that interception. Jay Higgins, my only issue with him was the athleticism was a bit capped. But besides that, he's a really, really good linebacker. Continuing on, Jack Kelly. He's an edge, but he's also, he's listed as middle linebacker. But in this instance, same bullshit. He was a pass rusher primarily, BYU versus SMU. Got to see him in person. But he ended up having 9 pressures, so I'm going to list him as an edge, but I think he's a middle linebacker, so I'll take that on the chin. 9 pressures, that's freaking ridiculous. But SMU's offensive line was absolutely garbage. Continuing on, though, you got Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa there. So we yo-yoed the Iowa guys. We split them with Jack Kelly there. But Caleb Johnson, I don't know if he's NFL translatable, but my God, this is the only reason Iowa had a chance. And this dude was literally the whole entire offense for Iowa. So shout out to him, dude. He was phenomenal. 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. Literally with Cade McNamara, who I wanted to include on the stock down list, but the dude's pretty much already not going to be drafted. He was absolute garbage. And Caleb Johnson really carried this team. So shout out to him, man. Kanata Mumfield is next. He didn't have like the craziest stats. 5 catches, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's good. It's definitely good. But again, we're talking about stars of the stars. The thing I loved about him is there was a play in the red zone that I fell in love with. He ended up continuing. He redirected his route to go in after he ended up going out, ended up seeing the play kind of broke down. And then he realized that when the quarterback started bailing to the right, and that quarterback for Pitt, I'm sorry for Pitt fans, man. He's absolute butt cheeks. But he ended up redirecting himself outward and just unbelievable separation, great change of direction. But, the IQ to be able to know what to do and when to do it and doing it in a phenomenal way. Like, that's what you look for in an NFL receiver. So super excited for Kanata Mumfield, somebody who I definitely will be adding to. I already had like 57 receivers. He's going to be definitely one of the guys who ends up being a lot higher than what some of those guys ended up being graded. But he was a big playmaker. Also, shout out to the running back, Des Reed. He's 175 pounds, but that dude's absolutely lightning quick. And then also Cincinnati's running back. Those were two guys who I really wanted to include on this list, but I could not. Then Will Johnson, I had to include him, after, allowing 70-something yards and having that pick six, thank God. But, versus Fresno State, it's like, okay, how do you bounce back? UT, you have Matt Golden, you have Isaiah Bond, you have Amari Niblack. Like, there are some really, really good receivers on this team. Ended up allowing only 6 yards. So that's a big win for Will Johnson. And honestly, those other receivers, they feasted on that corner too. So it wasn't like, oh, we didn't target Will Johnson, like, because, we were just only focusing on the other dude. No, Will Johnson just did a damn good job, and the other dude allowed the opportunities. So good job on Will Johnson. Tyler Warren is last on the stock up list. He ended up having 7 receptions for 140 yards. Drew Allar passed for 199. That is ridiculous. I mean, that's the type of game that Tyler Warren brings to the table. Like, he'll be someone who might catch like 30 yards some games, but when he goes off, he freaking goes off. And I mean, I love the fact that you have that high level play. In my top tight ends video, he was a little bit lower than some people expected, and I still loved him. It was the consistency that matters, and he's getting more and more consistent. So this is someone who is easily rising up boards. Phenomenal job for him there. But time to go stock down with our dud of the week. It's Riley Leonard, dude. I mean, 163 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2 big-time throws, but also 2 turnover-worthy plays in a loss versus Northern Illinois. The stats itself, there are worse quarterbacks that played this week. We will mention a couple of them. But to lose to NIU, you are a top 10 team ranked, and you're losing to NIU. But not only that, it's not like, hey, it was a shootout. NIU had themselves a day. They did not. They did, like, Notre Dame did jack. Like, they didn't do anything that was worth respecting in that regard. Like, I really was disappointed. I know that that Love, the running back, did actually a pretty good job, but like Riley Leonard, dude, you can't put up more than 200 yards versus NIU. You can't score a touchdown versus NIU. Glad he got the 2 big time throws in there, but that is a embarrassment. It really is. Someone who I was hoping to really take that boom, and RJ Oben didn't do that well either. He didn't play very many reps though, but it's like, the transfers just did not do their job. The one who did, though, I love him, is Bo Collins. He ended up having, still the most receiving yards on the team, the most targets, and like, I guess he's just Mr. Reliable on that team. Didn't do too well statistically, but he did better than everybody else in terms of that receiving core. But the rest of the stock down, we got Riley Mahlman. He ended up allowing 2 pressures, so it's like nothing crazy. But it's versus South Dakota. After allowing 4 pressures the week before, like, he has 6 pressures already on the year, and it's versus 2 teams that I really didn't think that they should allow pressures against. That's a big concern. Big concern at the next level. When you're allowing pressures to South Dakota, like, it's just not good. Continuing on, Jalen Daniels. This one, he was going to be the dud of the week. 141 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. And it's like, you know what? That's a sucky game. But is that really dud of the week? Here's the kicker. 0 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. That's an instant demotion from where he was on my quarterback rankings. He's a 5th-year senior, or I think he is a 5th-year senior, but he's a young 5th-year guy, but he's a 5th-year quarterback. You got to be better than that. This isn't the first game. It's the second game as well. And he did pretty damn well versus the team that they played last week, but he still threw a pick last week. He has 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, to 4 interceptions on the year. To start out, I'm like, you got to take care of the ball, dude. You got to take care of the ball. And based on the turnover-worthy plays, it could have been even worse. So that is certainly a concern. I was really hoping that Jalen could take that big step up, and definitely has not happened yet. He has the rest of the year to rebound, but versus Illinois, that was a big game to watch. That is the big game to watch because he did pretty damn well against them last year and then failed to do so this year. Tetairoa McMillan's next. This makes no sense. Like, this game kind of mind boggles me based off of their play versus New Mexico, but versus Northern Arizona, they did like almost nothing. It was mind boggling. 2 receptions, 11 yards. After 300 versus New Mexico, you get 2 receptions for 11 yards. It wasn't like he was out there for 3 reps, right? He was out there for, I think, over 30. So, I mean, I don't care if they're double teaming you. You need to produce a little bit more than that if you're going to be considered a top 15 pick, like a top 15 lock at this moment. People think it's disrespectful for him to be outside of the top 10. You got to do better than that, man. You got to. And I'm on record saying in the correct system, he could be a top 15 receiver in the NFL. Then Grace McCall's after that. I mean, he's just been abysmal there for North Carolina State. He was my second lowest graded quarterback, but Caden Salter was dealing with a shoulder injury, so I'm giving him some slack. He's my worst graded quarterback, and he's starting to look like it. Really is. 104 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 0 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. He was the guy who played worse than Riley Leonard that I was really talking about. Piss poor performance versus Tennessee. And Nico Lamalea, I don't know how to say his last name. We'll eventually find out. He is somebody who didn't even perform that well either. Like, he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. So, it was a game that should have been far closer. And Grayson McCall is somebody that we've been kind of hoping, like, hey, we thought of him before, like last year in the transfer portal, like, hey, go to Notre Dame. Like, you could try to, go crazy. And then Sam Hartman kind of took that job from him. And it's like, oh, damn. And Sam Hartman, thank God he went to Notre Dame, because if Grayson McCall did, he better, like, if he started putting up performances like this, I mean, we might even be talking about him worse than Riley Leonard. But continuing on, Jalen Conyers, it just kind of sucks, but Tech is still not using him properly. 2 receptions, 6 yards. Jason Barham, 43 defensive grade for Michigan in a key game where they got their asses whooped. I mean, I already was pretty low on Jason Barham, and he was someone who was very high when he was a true freshman at Maryland. But you got to step up to the plate. Xavier Nwankpa ended up getting a 40, I think it was 42 grade, but I think it might be 40. It's one of the two. He just ended up being butt cheeks grade-wise because he let up a 75-yard touchdown, and he is ass in man coverage. I don't know who in their right mind is putting this guy deep and putting him as in man-to-man. This guy is a zone corner. He's a zone guy who belongs in the box. I don't get it. That is misutilization of your assets. I don't get it, don't understand it, but that's why he ended up sucking that game. Howard Cross ended up having 0 pressures in that loss versus NIU, so I'm keep putting him on that list because you should do a better job. And it's not like he did a horrible job. At the end of the day, you were part of the biggest upset of the week, and then you didn't produce. Jaden Roberts. Also, I could throw in, why am I forgetting Booker's first name? But Booker and Roberts, both of them allowed 2 pressures, respectively, each, versus USF, South Florida. I'm like, what the hell? They don't have that good of talent, man. I loved USF. They were my first team I ever rooted for in college because in like NCAA 06, I liked their colors. Like, that's the only affinity I have for USF. You should not be allowing pressures like that. You should not. The whole entire Alabama team performed on offense relatively poorly. And then Josh Connolly Jr. out of Oregon allowed 3 pressures this week. Same thing with Marcus Harper, who was on the other side, on the guard side. But, when you're being talked about as a potential first-round pick with that rise of being a former 5-star, being a great athlete, you can't allow Boise State to get 3 pressures on you. So we'll see how he bounces back. But I'm really starting to think I should do stock down first because I like ending on the high note. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I love y'all. See you on the far side.